So speaking of woke companies, we've been covering hypocrisy of large corporations pretending to stand for the little people for a while here. At the same time, as they walk all over them, these large companies like to wrap themselves in a blanket of wokeness in order to curry favor with the woke mob on Twitter. And in so doing, we have another company this morning that's gotten caught up in the woke, got the woke bug, caught the woke bug this morning. That's Levi Strauss. The very company, by the way, that was founded on the freedom of the westward expansion, right? Outfitting all of those seeking gold in the California gold rush. Levi Strauss, right? Famously outfitted the prospectors, made millions. You know, they weren't prospecting for gold. They were outfitting them in blue jeans. Well, yesterday we learned longtime Levi Strauss and Company executive has been forced out because she has spoken out against school closures during the pandemic in California. Now, just put that in perspective for a second. Levi Strauss, in San Francisco, she worked in San Francisco for 30 years. She worked there. She worked at the company for 20. She lived in San Francisco for 30 years. She was speaking out against California's lockdowns of schools during the pandemic last year. Okay, something that we've been very outspoken about here on this show, which was, you know, these school closings have been absolutely soul crushing for these children. It's set them back untold years in developmental learning. And look, it's been particularly difficult for families of lower economic means, right? Especially for those families, there's 12 million families that don't have internet access. How are they going to do virtual school? They don't get to work from home, those parents, you know? So how are they going to afford suddenly they have to leave their job? They have to leave their job or hire childcare, but they can't afford that. So, of course, it disproportionately hurt Americans of lower economic means. So she was speaking out against this, you know? And then, you know, if you speak out against this, you will be attacked by the woke mob. Like, how dare you? How dare you? Well, here she is. Here is her name. Her name is Jennifer Say. And she says that she gave up a $1 million severance package so that she couldn't be silenced. Now, Say reported that the company's CEO, Charles Berg, told her that it was untenable for her to remain at the company where she worked for the last 2 decades because she refused to stop speaking out against California's school shutting down policy in the name of safety. He said, "You've got to stop doing this. You've got to stop speaking out about this." Now, she was interviewed by Fox Business, and she said, quote, "I've been a Democrat my whole life, my whole voting life, and I feel the party has abandoned their principles." She says, "I find myself quite politically homeless." Excuse me, is how she described herself. And she said, "Free speech and children are not right-wing issues." This is my favorite part of her quote. She says, "Children and freedom of speech are not right-wing issues." And they shouldn't be considered.
That is such a true statement, and I think everybody needs to listen to that because it's so true, because anybody that goes against any narrative of the establishment is automatically right-wing. Like I just saw a compilation of Joe Rogan where they call Joe Rogan right-wing, but if you listen to him, all of his policies that he cares about are all left. He's had Bernie on. He would have voted for Bernie. He talked to Tulsi Gabbard. Like, he is not right, but it's like anything you say against that narrative, if you go against the left in any way, shape, or form, you are a right-winger.
Yeah, I saw Kyle Kalinske tweeted a compilation video of Joe Rogan where Joe's, exactly to your point, he's going on. He's like yelling at a Republican. He's like you Republicans. He's like, you can't ever spend money on people. He's like, but you can spend money on war. He's like, I'm a Bernie guy. I'm a Bernie Sanders guy. Like, on and on.
He
and
wants
on,
universal health care. He wants a universal basic income. Like he wants all the things that the real Democrats want.
But they'll paint him as a right-wing nut job, right? Because he's, you know, standing up for personal freedoms and for personal liberties, right? So she said, I love that quote that she says, you know, she finds herself politically homeless because I think a lot of Democrats do. Like, if you are not a part of that like middle of the road Joe Biden moderate Democratic wing of the party, you know, then you're an outcast. You're a socialist. You're a Bernie Sanders socialist. Okay, sign me up. Sign me up then. She said, free speech and children are not right-wing issues. and they shouldn't be considered beyond the pale to stand up for these things, even be right wing for that matter. She says it's like if you stand up for children, that you should be allowed to do that, right? Should be
Well, and it correlates back to everything. If you don't want vax mandates, if you don't want to wear masks because you believe the science, you're automatically right wing. With every decision that you make that goes against anything that the left is saying is you have to wear masks, you have to do this, you have to do that. You go against that, you're right wing automatically.
Yeah.
When you said 90% of these truckers are vaccinated, they just don't want mandates, so they're right wing.
Right. Right. And I've heard people saying, well, we should really look into that 90%, see if that's accurate. Like we should really, like we got to undercut that, just because we don't know if that's true. Okay, fine. Yeah. Do your journalism.
Even if it's not true, let's say it's only 30%. Who cares?
Right. Doesn't matter. Right. Because if you're standing up for free speech, why is that a right wing nut job position?
Right.
I mean, I'm as far left as you can get. So, I'm standing up for free speech. I don't think, I think censorship of Marjorie Taylor Greene to Alex Jones to, I don't know, to Dave Chappelle, any of them. I don't want censorship of anybody. But she says it certainly shouldn't make you unemployable. So she even picked her family up because she believed in this so strongly, okay? She picked her family up and moved them from San Francisco to Colorado. That's what she did. Now, in much the same way that I picked up my family and moved out of the United States, I was sick of it. I was sick of the horrible drinking water. I was sick of the ridiculous high taxes, the terrible infrastructure, awful schooling, on and on the list. The high crime.
Cowboys and country singers must have saw this coming because they all switched to Wrangler
yeah,
a long time ago.
And Bass Pro Shop hats, right? I guess so. So anyway, so she picks up her family from San Francisco. She's a Democrat, and she moves to Colorado in order to return her children to in-person learning and continue to speak out against the closures in the media. But, oh, no. So now she goes on television. She goes on Fox News and did an interview with Laura Ingraham. Okay, remember, she's a Democrat. That is when, let me play the clip. Let me just play this clip. This is from a year ago. This is 1 year ago, okay? Here is this mom, Jennifer Say, who works for Levi's, and here's why she moved her family from California to Colorado.
Decision and what you experienced leading up to it.
Well, it was a really difficult decision. I've lived in San Francisco for over 30 years. My job is there. It's still there. My home is there. But as this went on, and I've been very active in the open schools movement, both nationally and locally, and we just haven't made progress in California and in San Francisco, and I have very little hope that schools will open this spring. And I don't have a ton of hope they're going to open full-time, face-to-face 5 days for fall. And my 6-year-old, he's a kindergartner. His experience of school since September is 2.5 hours a day on an iPad. It's just not engaging. And I saw his personality really start to change.
Yeah, I saw the same thing with our little one in kindergarten, our 5-year-old. At home learn. I think she was sit back probably a whole year. Fortunately, she just started kindergarten this year, so it was like an early whatever you do before kindergarten. They name it everything different everywhere else, but you need that socialization. You need to be able to see teachers' mouths. Like having a teacher where you only get to see their eyes. We now know the data on that too. Like there's a whole generation of children being developmentally hindered because of these policies.
Yeah, you saw that. Did I shared that tweet with you, right, from that speech therapist that was talking about the speech impediments and stuff?
Talk about that. Yeah, David shared a tweet from a friend of yours, his speech therapist. What did it say?
Well, it wasn't a friend of mine. It was just a retweet from somebody that I follow. And they were saying kids, in order to learn language, it's visual as well. People think that you just have to hear, but by seeing how somebody says a P, there's a lot of visual stuff that goes into language as well. It's not all just words. And so she's seeing kids that are having trouble with saying their P's, and they're not forming words correctly, and even drooling because they're not using their mouths the right way because they've not seen teachers show them how to use their mouths to make certain words. And that she's never seen this before, and so it's probably more widespread than she even knows. But it's just people are standing up for kids because they see these things.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed when my 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and she was developing her speech, she's watching me and she's watching my mouth, she's watching my lips, so she can understand. And We live in a foreign country, so she's also learning a foreign language at the same time. How incredibly important it is. I know when I take my language class, like if the teacher has a thing over her mouth, I can't understand. It's very difficult for me. I need to see how you structure and put a word together. All of that, right?
And even think of like at the base level. Like imagine if you were trying to learn Portuguese using the Babbel app like you do, right? And you were trying to learn Portuguese, but you didn't know how to form a P or a C or whatever. You already have that base level to know what those letters, like your mouth forms those letters, but they don't have that yet as kids.
Horrible. I mean, and you're right about that. So we have the ability because we went through schooling. We have 20, 30 years of experience doing that. She doesn't. And so many kids are being set back. So she saw this, right? Anyway, she spoke out about it. She is part of an open schools movement, right? So Fox invited her on to tell her story. Well, guess what? After that Laura Ingraham interview, and in the year since that Laura Ingraham interview, they've basically said, you need to go packing. Like, it's untenable that you work here anymore. After that appearance, she says that she was accused of being racist. By the way, I don't know how they're claiming that she was racist somehow because she wanted open schools.
Well, that's their.
She is she's the mother of 2 black children. On top of that, so she's the mother of 2 black children.
Look at it. Look at the narrative. Every time you go against it, you're anti-government. Then you're a terrorist. Then you're a white supremacist. Then you're all of these things. They just have they have this formula that they go through to paint you that way.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, here you are. Now you're a white supremacist. Now you're this. You're racist. She's the mother of 2 black children. So Levi's asked her to go on an apology tour. They asked her to go on an apology tour, to go on television and apologize.
Wow.
And it should be noted also that the current CEO told her that she was on track to become the next CEO of Levi's. She would have been. Jennifer Say, this is her name. Know this name. I think she's, anyway, she's a hero. She was to be the next CEO of Levi's. And the only thing standing in her way, she was being told, was to stop talking about this whole school thing. The current CEO was saying, hey, Jennifer, I'm telling you, the only thing that's standing in your way, you got to stop talking about this open schools thing. You want to be CEO? You want to be CEO? Then shut your mouth. So Levi's forced her out.
Wow.
She wasn't going to stop speaking out about it. She moved her whole family because she wanted a better experience for her children.
I mean,
this outspokenness.
Understand, Levi's CEO is not going to be a low-paying job.
No. In fact, she turned down a $1 million severance package in order to continue espousing her views. They actually tried to get her to sign a non-disclosure agreement when she was leaving as part of her severance package. They were going to pay her a $1 million severance package if she would keep her mouth shut. She said, no, thank you. No, thanks. Good for her. Speaking out for her good, to have an unbelievably moral compass. And Levi Strauss should be ashamed of themselves for giving into this woke mob, which tries to silence speech it doesn't agree with. By the way, so I wanted to do some digging on this. Levi's has always been a name, right, that's been synonymous with rock and roll, counterculture, right? It's an idea that you can stick it to the authority, right? Maybe Levi's, you're going to see like...
Yeah, they even have the ripped, like you can get pre-ripped jeans.
Yeah,
ripped jeans are the
sticking it to
epitome of stick it to the man.
Yeah, right? So I decided to look into their labor practices to see how well they treat people, how much they care about human beings. And if you look at their labor conditions, according to the Fashion Revolution's Transparency Index, Levi's scored a 41 to 50% out of 100%. Levi's has failed tremendously towards making progress towards ensuring equal pay or payment for a living wage for its workers. Much of its supply chain is shrouded in mystery. A lot of their supply chain has substandard working and health and safety conditions. Okay, that's just the human side of this, right? What about the animal welfare side of this, right? They do a lot of verbalizing about how they take care of animals. They're ethical to animals, how animals aren't harmed in the production of their products. According to their cruelty for animal welfare policy, their animal welfare, quote, isn't good enough, according to the index. Its current animal welfare policy insists that the supply chains for the sourcing of all animal products must be traceable. But despite this, it's still, you can't trace it. They don't know. Half of it, you can't even find where it comes from. It still does use leather, of course, down and feathers and wool, but they don't know where these sources, so these sources, like, are they being treated ethically to get their wool, or are they killing these animals in order to get their wool? So yet another example of a company telling us one thing, telling their employees not to talk out about school closures, while at the same time failing to provide adequate wages for workers and transparency in animal cruelty for its supply chain. But you keep on trucking with that hypocrisy, Levi's. And, we can certainly vote with our wallets on what types of pairs of jeans we intend to buy. And it's amazing that this mom, after a year of this, after a year ago being on the Ingram angle, finally is like pushed out, like, you got to stop talking about this. Enough's enough. This is San Francisco. You can't speak out about these types of things. Just go with the flow. You want to be CEO, don't you? Then just keep your mouth shut. So good for her, and bad for Levi's.
And if you really wanted to determine what woke meant, I mean, that's being more woke. She's awakened to the fact that what is happening is wrong. Like, that's like what woke should be.
Right. That's where the word comes from. Right.
Right.
Stay woke meant don't fall victim to propaganda and ignoring what's actually happening. And what's actually happened in minorities in the United States. Stay woke. That's what it meant. It meant stay awake. Stay awake. That's it. And then, of course, it gets co-opted by these companies who now take it on, and they focus on one key piece. They one thing, and they ignore other things, right? Again, I come back to Justin Trudeau, taking on these woke positions about kneeling for Black Lives Matter, and they can condemn. Didn't Justin Trudeau he condemned. He condemned genocide, making sure that in Canada, they had a history, right? We had a history of Native peoples genocide, right? Making sure that never happened again, and committing to making sure that Canada was always going to be open and transparent about this, and providing historical context and taking care of Native peoples. But when then asked to also condemn China for its genocide against religious Uyghurs, no comment, quiet, crickets. You can't do it. Can't do it because of their trade agreements and everything else. So that's wokeness, right? That's exactly what that is. So good on this mom for doing this. I'm proud of her. I think that's great. And she decided to move her family. I could see my wife doing the same thing, saying, "Hey, no, it's not worth it. I'm moving my family. I don't want my kids to go through this anymore, and we're going to move to an area that allows in-person learning again." Now I just hope we can get rid of these masks in schools. That's the next step in all of this. That's the next step. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, we have a membership program. For the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism just by going to morninginvest.com/join.
You get access to exclusive videos, plus the ability to join and chat with us live. We really appreciate your subscription, and you are supporting independent journalism.